Welcome back, guys. It's Israel. Today we're going to be integrating Stripe into our .NET API. But for what reason, you may ask? Well, if you guys have ever wanted to be able to accept payment in your application, using Stripe is a great way to go. Their API makes it very easy to keep track of your customers, create new products, edit your products, and keep track of everything that you're really selling, as well as, most importantly, be able to pay securely within your application while using Stripe. So let's get into what is Stripe, the workflow, and then we'll dive into the code and the project. So let's go. But just really quick, I want to give a shout out to all my channel members. I really appreciate the support. If you guys also want to see your names here, as well as have access to all the repos for all the videos on my channel, please click the link in the description or go to the join button on my channel page. So let's begin with what is Stripe. Stripe is a payment service provider that lets merchants accept cards or many types of payments. Obviously, this can be in the form of you're just using Stripe as a service, though we are obviously going to be consuming it for our own applications. Stripe exposes many APIs that developers can consume to integrate these features into their apps. Stripe can take care of the hassle of making payments so that you as a developer don't have to worry about coding it. This allows a secure way of taking payment, and it offloads the responsibility of credit cards and anything like that to Stripe. It just really takes that pressure off of you as a developer that you don't have to deal with, storing credit card information or anything like that. Because if you decide that you want to store or capture that info, then you have to go through the whole security of your database and where you're keeping it. And there's a lot more compliances that you need to be. While Stripe is just going to handle all that, and you don't have to keep that in your application, and it's like a third-party entity, and you can kind of offload that responsibility, and it's just ease, right? Why do it yourself and write it yourself when, there's a service out there that already does it for you? So that's the benefit of Stripe, and I think it really just takes that pressure off of all that secure data and all that stuff. You don't have to worry about it. And then right here, what I really want to cover is really just the workflow of Stripe. How does making a payment with Stripe work? So let me move this a little bit so I don't bother you guys. So what's going to happen first is right here, someone is going to send an order, right? So they're going to try and buy something. So let's say they're buying a shirt. So the client bought a shirt, they press the buy button. Now they're like, oh, well, let's go check out. So we're sending the client's information for what they're trying to buy. We're sending it over to our API. In our API, we're going to create a checkout session. So we're going to go to Stripe. We're going to say, hey, here's our keys, everything that we need to. We want to create a checkout session because we have someone that wants to buy something. Can you allow us to access that product, its information, and everything so that we can have a secure checkout URL? So once it gives the okay, it'll return the checkout session. The API will then redirect the client to a Stripe URL, which we will see later when we actually do the code demo. Basically, we don't actually handle the checkout. What happens is our application will route out to a Stripe checkout URL that it will send us where we can actually do the secure transaction. And then you'll end up at the Stripe checkout. And then over here is where the client will actually enter their information, their email, their credit card information, whether it's with Google Pay, Apple Pay, whatever system they're going to use to pay. They all do that within Stripe. So you're not in your application over here. You're in Stripe doing this. And then once it's successful or they cancel, you will get back two different URLs from the Stripe API. And either you will then, return to your application on success, or you will cancel and go to whatever page you show if, payment didn't go through or they just wanted to back out, right? So that is kind of the workflow that I wanted to diagram for you guys, and we're going to see it when we actually go through the code and I demo my project for you guys. But this is essentially what is going on when you want to make a payment with Stripe. You have someone that wants to buy something. You then go to Stripe as a developer and is like, hey, I want to create a checkout session. They're then going to give you back a URL and is like, hey, give this to the customer. Let them go to Stripe now. It's off of your back. They're going to Stripe. They get to complete the process over here, whether they buy it or not. You have two URLs that you get back from Stripe. And at that point, whether they bought it, successful, you show your success screen, bought, whatever, notification in your email, blah, blah, blah. Or you just go back to wherever you were before they clicked this because they didn't actually go through it with it. But that is essentially what is going on in the workflow and what we're actually going to build in our application. And speaking of the application, let's dive into the code. All right, guys, so now we are at the project section. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and create our .NET API, and then I want to show you guys what I have on the client side. I know this is not going to be an Angular focused video, but I am using an Angular front end just to show a little bit of like the mock little store that I'm creating. And so I can show you like the checkout URL that we talked about in the slides. But let's go ahead and create our API, and then we can go to the front end, and then we can keep moving along with Stripe. First, we're going to select the core web API. Next, then I'm just going to call it Stripe API YT because we're on YouTube again. Next, we're going to do .NET, and then I'm just going to create. Okay, so first thing I did, I went ahead and just got rid of all the like default things that come with the .NET API, all that weather stuff. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to show you what Nuget packages you guys need in your .NET API. So the only Nuget package you're actually going to need is going to be the Stripe Nuget package. So go to Browse, and then you can just click Stripe. And then it should pop up. It should be the Stripe.NET right here. Install that. And this is the only thing that we're going to need to install to just get Stripe working on our .NET 8 API. So now that we have that done, I just want to go ahead and show you guys the front end that we have, what my Angular project looks like. I'm not going to go too in depth about it since, like I said, it's not an Angular video, but just want to show you guys that I do have something. So what do I have? Well, we just have a few things. So we have a main page, which is just going to say Israel store. And then inside of here, we're going to have a product section. This is where I'm going to go to Stripe and get my products. Then we are going to have this product section. This is where I'm going to loop through all my products, show these little cards that just have the product information. And like I said, you guys will see that in a second. And then we're going to have a button that says buy this product. And then the next thing that we're going to have is we are going to have a success page, or if we get a cancel, we're just going to route back to this main page as well. And then that is, I think, all you guys really need to know here. We're just really going to have one main page that says Israel store with my products in there. We're going to click buy. When you click buy, all that's going to do is it's going to go to our API, our buy product endpoint, which is then going to go to our .NET 8 API, which then goes to Stripe and basically then gets us that URL to redirect to the Stripe checkout, to where you actually go to Stripe and pay. So this is where we're redirecting right here. And I think this is really all you guys need to know here. Right now, if you guys were to look at this, this is what it is, because we're not currently loading any products because the API isn't set up yet, but we would just have some stuff here, and I'll show you guys this later when we're actually going to demo, and I can show you guys all these different steps actually working. But now let's actually go back, and now let's go to what you actually need to set up on the Stripe side, on the Stripe dashboard, creating a Stripe account. Okay, so now what I want to do with you guys is actually go through and set up everything that we're going to need on the Stripe side, so that then we can go and fill out our .NET API with everything that we need. So first, like if anything, you're going to use a third party, you need an account. So to do that, you need to go to dashboard.stripe.com/login or sign up, I'm assuming, right? So go ahead and sign up. If you don't have an account, so you would click here. And then you would go through all this stuff. You do not have to go through and do like the business model. Like if you actually have a business, there is a test version of this. That is what I'm currently using since I'm just using this for this video. So I'm going to go back and I'm just going to log in. We're going to continue. And then once you log in, you should see your dashboard. And if you're in test, you should see a test mode right here. And then you'll see a few things over here. So you'll see payments. So these were test payments that I've already done on my account researching for this video. So you should see payments like this. Don't think that this is my actual credit card. It's test credit cards, guys. Guys, don't do sketchy stuff. Then you can go to your balance. You can see stuff that's been paid to you, how much money's coming in, how much money's coming out. You can also see your customers. So I've already purchased something without creating an account. So I'm seeing that right here, that I was a guest and I'm creating an account. This is where you could have like customer information, right, for the future. Billing is here, and then you have a lot more things, such as you can set subscriptions, you can send invoices, and something else very important is your product catalog, right? So I've already gone ahead and manually created two. Another great thing about the dashboard is you can manually go in and add products. So right here, you would say, shoe number 3, I don't know. Shoe 3, and you would say your description, you would upload an image, you could set it to be a reoccurring payment or just a one-off payment, and then you can see the preview with your tax and all that stuff. So I've already gone ahead and added 2 products, and I did it through the dashboard. There's also programmatic ways of creating products through your application. I will show you guys where all of that stuff is in the documentation in just a second, but I want to show you guys kind of what you can do on the dashboard if you didn't want to go ahead and actually code all this other functionality. So I've already gone ahead and created a product. It's a sneaker that I've always really wanted, the Jordan 5, and I gave it a description. I created it on February 16th. And then I set the price of it. So all this is information. I set an image of it, and I did the same thing for another pair of sneakers that I like. And I did the exact same thing. So I manually created these 2, but again, you can do this programmatically, and I'll show you guys later. And I'll show you guys how you can know what all the endpoints of the API are, because Stripe's documentation is actually really good. So I'm gonna go back now. So this was kind of everything that I want to show you guys in the dashboard. So again, just make sure that you have some products. If you want to create them here, you can have also coupons, set shipping rates, pricing. You can do all of this stuff in here and so much more. But for our purpose of the demo, we need to have products that we can buy so that we can show you using Stripe to pay for things. So for that being said, these are here, and I think everything else is set up. So now once you have this, the only other thing that you need are going to be your keys. So if you guys don't know how to get to your keys for your application, which you need to be able to access Stripe, you're going to click on developers. Then you're going to see all this good stuff right here. You're going to go to API keys, and here are going to be your 2 keys. These you will be able to set in your app settings in your .NET API, or if you want to be fancier, you can use Azure, which, spoiler, is the proper way. But we'll talk about that another time. But you'll have these 2 keys right here. These obviously you want to keep secret. If you guys see my keys, ignore them. They'll be this whole project will be gone by the time you guys see this video. So don't try no weird stuff. But these are the 2 that you're gonna need. So copy both of them and go to your app settings right here, and we are going to be moving them into here. So once you go ahead and copy them both, what you're gonna need to do is just go to your app settings and then copy them both into here. So you have your secret key and your publishable key. You're gonna need both of these when you are trying to call out to the Stripe API. You're gonna need to pass in these values so that you can set up your connection and then access the given endpoints. And we'll see that in the code in a second, but this is probably the only other thing that you need from the dashboard because this is your connection, right? So if you guys are following along, the next thing you guys should probably do is go ahead and create some products so that you actually have something that you want to pull. You can do that either, in the dashboard or programmatically. And let me show you guys the documentation. This documentation will also be linked in the description so that you guys can use it to access other things that maybe I don't go over in this demo. So this is going to be the Stripe API documentation. So Stripe API docs.stripe.com/API. This is where you're going to find literally anything. Let's say we want to create a product programmatically. So let's do product. You'll see that. So we click products here. Then we can scroll down. It's going to show you what they're going to send back. So this is what the object looks like. And then it shows you a bunch of the different endpoints. Create a product, update a product, get, delete, get. And then you can scroll down. And let's say we want to create a product, right? What is the code that we need? So you would toggle it to whatever you're using. So in our case, it's .NET. You're going to need to use that API key, right? That secret key. You're going to need to use that. It tells you what options you have to pass in. So it could be name or anything else that you want to set. And then you just create your service, and then you do service.create and you pass in your options. And that is literally all the code that you need to create a product. And it will show you that literally for anything that you want to do. So let's say you wanted to, create a customer, which we're going to do in a little bit. You see the customer object and then scroll down. Here's create a customer. All you literally have to do is, again, set the API key, do your little options, customer service, and create. Stripe API is very easy to use, and it is extremely convenient. They're basically doing like, hey, you should use this because it's just so much more convenient, right? So we'll go through more of this code in a little bit, but I just wanted to show you guys how good the documentation is. And like I said, it will be linked down below if you guys want to explore more things like creating a product or all those other things that I'm not going to do in the demo, but you can do programmatically, right? But in my case, I went ahead and already created it through the dashboard. So now let's go back to the API and let's start writing our methods. All right, guys, so now that we're back at the project, let's create a few things that we are going to need. So we're obviously going to need at least one controller, right? So let's go in here. Let's add controller. We're just going to do an empty. We're going to add, and we are going to call this the Stripe controller. So Stripe controller, enter, create. Now I'm going to go here and I'm going to create a folder for my models, which we're going to have 2 at least. So let's go in here, add new item. So this is going to be the Stripe customer. Add that one. And then in here, I'm also going to do a new item, and we're going to do the Stripe model. This one's going to be for actually grabbing everything that we're going to need from the app settings. So now let's go ahead and fill out our program.cs. The first thing that we're going to need is that we are going to need to go and get our connection strings from our app settings. We're going to need to grab this stuff. So how do we do that? Well, we go right here. We're going to use our Stripe model, which this Stripe model needs things. What is our Stripe model going to have? It is going to have our secret key and our publishable key. So basically just says that our Stripe inside the Stripe, which the Stripe is here, we have these 2, and we're just modeling that in here. So once we do that, we are going to configure our services to then go in there, get this section from the configuring, and go to Stripe, and then get that section. Like I said, that section being these 2 things. Next thing that we're going to need to do is configure a good amount of the services that we are going to be using from Stripe. So I'm going to do a little bit extra, but just want to show you guys kind of how you can do this. So we're really only going to be using the customer and product service, but if you wanted to do auth, you use a token service. Charge service for charging, and there's plenty other services that you can find on the documentation, but this is how you would go about injecting them into your application. You would just need to set them up here so that then, let's say you wanted to create a product or grab all products, you would just, use this product service like we're going to see later. Or if you wanted to create a customer or grab their details, you would again invoke the customer service in whatever controller you're trying to use. This next piece is really only because we have an Angular front end, but again, if you have any type of front end that you're connecting to and from, maybe you also need to add a course policy. So basically, I'm just allowing the origin of 4200, which is where every Angular application kind of chills out when it's on localhost. So we're going to add this course policy in here so that we don't have any issues connecting our client side to our .NET API. If you guys don't know or are interested in how to connect your Angular and your .NET API and how that application would work, go check out the video linked up at the top, which is my Angular 17 .NET 8 video that I made a few months ago. So check that out. I think it's a good video, and you'll probably learn something if you like this video. So go check that video out. But after this video, don't leave yet. But let's move along. Next thing that we're going to need to do is just make sure that we add and use this course policy. So by doing that, you would just put it here. And now we are using our course policy so that our .NET API can talk to our front end. And we've now set up all our Stripe services to then be used in our Stripe controller. And we have our connection strings and access to them. So that is everything that we're going to need in here. Now let's go and add our Stripe customer model. So that's going to look like this. Our Stripe customer model is just going to be when we can create a customer, and the only things that we're going to need for that is name and email. I'll explain a little bit more on how you would, ideally create a customer in a real life application, but I'll do that when I get there. But now let's move on to our Stripe controller, and let's do everything that we need to do in there. All right, guys, so now that we're at our Stripe controller, let's set this thing up. So first things first, let's decorate this controller with it being an API controller, and as well as its route. So we're going to set this controller base as well. We don't need this because we're not using these views. And now let's set up our services. So again, we're not going to be using the token service or the charge service. Just wanted to show you guys how you would kind of declare them. But this is what you would do. You would just set them up here. And then you would go about in your constructor. So your constructor would look like this. So inside the Stripe controller constructor, what we're going to have is our iOptions model. This is what's going to have the keys in it, these keys right here. So we can actually access them. Then we're going to be injecting our token service, customer service, charge service, and product service. But like I said, we're only going to be using these 2. Just wanted to show you guys how you would kind of set all this up in case you were going to use more than just these services. Moving along, the first method that we're going to have is going to be the pay method. This method is going to be the one once someone wants to buy something. They click the buy button. They click that checkout button. And now it's okay, we need to initiate the process of giving this person their session. And good thing that I said creating a session, because again, I want to remind you guys of this workflow. So this pay method right here is going to be this right here. It's going to be when the client sends over their order information. Once it hits my endpoint, we are now right here at the pay method. Now what we have to do is create our checkout session. So this is how you would go ahead and do that. So the next code that we're going to need is the following. We are going to need to grab our secret key from our model. So that's what we're going to do here. And we're going to configure it right here by setting the API key so that we get access to Stripe as we need. Then we're going to do the following. We are going to grab this price ID, which is going to come from the client side. This price ID is going to be the ID of the price object that is attached to a given product. Yes, they are two different things. You have your product object, and within that product, you're going to have a price ID, and then that price ID has a price object. And I'll show you guys how to retrieve that in a little bit, but essentially that price ID is what's going to come in, not the product ID. So with that price ID, that's going to come in. We are going to set our session creation options, and we're essentially going to create a new session. So we again are doing what it says on the diagram. We are creating a checkout session. We are going to set our line items of what we're going to purchase. So in this case, we're only buying one thing. So we have like this, but if you were doing multiple things, you would be passing in a list of these, and then you would be creating a list inside of here. We are doing a mode of payment. And then this is also the place where you are setting your success URL and cancel URL so that your front end knows where to go based on what Stripe is going to tell it. Once we get to this step, you then either go to success or cancel. And since right now I'm running in localhost, I'm going to go to either the success page or I'm just going to route back to the main page. And now let's move along. And now in our last 3 lines of code, we invoke the session service. We now create that checkout session and we pass in all these options. And then we return OK. I want to throw in one wrinkle into this just so that you guys are aware. Right here, it's going to be this one commented out piece, and I'll show you guys in the demo what this does. But essentially, right here is a customer ID. This customer ID you will have for customers in your dashboard when you create them. So right now, see, this one is a guest. I will show you guys later how to create a customer, as well as where you can get that customer ID. But essentially, every customer ID you would pass in as an option to your session. And what that does is it will then pre-fill a certain amount of information in that Stripe checkout form, which we'll see in a second. But this is where you would pass that in if the person actually signed in, is on their account, and you want to help them out, check out a little faster, right? Versus a guest checkout, which is what this one would currently be. But this is where you would do that. And speaking of customers, let me go ahead and do the create customer method. So to do that, it's going to look a little bit like this. So our create customer method is going to look a little bit like this. So we're going to be passing in the body a Stripe customer. Again, Stripe customer, name, and email. We are then going to have the following code. Not a lot. Like I said, Stripe is very good about having very to the point code. So we again are going to have that secret key being passed into here. Then we're going to create a customer create options. So again, very simple. We set our options here, email and name, and then we invoke the customer service, and then we create. And then this will create you a new customer, and I'll show you guys how it works in a little bit. But how would this work in a real life application? So ideally, you would want to maybe have inside of here their username, a password, or maybe their username can be their email, right? But you would want to have a little bit more information so that then once you go into this create customer, you don't only want to create it in Stripe. You want to actually have it in your application. But why? Because maybe you have a login. You have to log into that application, and Stripe's not going to do that for you. Stripe only wants name and email or card information and stuff like that, right? So what you can do is once you get the OK here, then here, actually create your customer object in your apps database, right? So now in here, you are now personally managing your logging in and authentication and stuff like that. But now you have in Stripe as well your customers so that you can access the customers within all of the Stripe environment, right? And the final method that we're going to need to actually complete a transaction, right, is we're going to need to have products to buy, right? If we don't have products, then what are we buying, right? We don't just buy air. Unless you buy air. I don't know why you would buy air. But okay, we're getting off the topic. But let's go back here. The next method that we're going to have is get all products. In get all products, we are going to do what that says, which is get all products. So again, we're going to add our secret key to our Stripe configuration.api. And in this next part is where I'm going to go back to saying where I mentioned the price ID, where you can expand a certain object to include more objects inside of it. Let's say we want to get our products, but we don't also then want to go to the price and then go use the price ID and again hit the Stripe API, right? We're making two calls when ideally we'd want to just make one. So what we want to do is we want to expand our object to include more information. And to do that, you'll see that we'll have to do something like this. Whenever I was working with the products in preparation for this video, when you go and retrieve a product, it doesn't actually bring back the price, right? You would think the price would come included whenever you go and grab a given product from Stripe, but it does not bring back this 200 USD. It only brings back the ID that references that price. So to actually grab the price, you need to pass in data.defaultPrice and expand it. This basically tells Stripe, hey, I know we want all the products, but could you please include the price object inside of every given product so that we have that accessible, so that we can then show that to the front end, the price of the object, right? Obviously, if we're going to buy a product, we need to know the price. So then the next thing you would do, you take your options, pass into the product service, and you would get a list of products, and you return the list of products. And that's all you would have to do. But again, this is something that you can expand essentially anywhere that you go into the documentation and you were to see, I don't know, an object, and you would see some type of ID. Let me do product specifically because that's the one that I worked with. So like in this case, where we're looking for the price object, the price is its own object. It only references this product with this ID right here. So they're not nested inside of each other. They're completely different objects. Maybe you only want the price, you don't want the product. But again, to include the default price, you would need to access this default price right here. And to do that, you would expand in here and do data.defaultPrice. And essentially, anywhere that you need some other object that's also defined in the documentation, you need to just make sure to expand, which expand basically, if you just imagine you have an object and you need to expand it with more information, you need to just include what Stripe needs to also include, and it'll go ahead and do that for you, and we'll see it when we demo. So that is really all that we need for our purposes of our demo, so that I can show you guys how to check out with a customer, with a guest, as well as get all your products, as well as just paying and doing your session and doing that whole process successfully. The last thing I do want to show you is just to tag on a little bit here is this is all you would also need to do if you wanted to create a product through the code. You would need to then just reach out to do your product create options. So, and then you would just do, the name of my product is whatever. And then you would then call your product service and then create, and it would be the exact same process as we've done here. So it's, again, very easy and straightforward to do all of these things. And it's very easy to work with Stripe, guys. So I have my front end running. So now let's boot up the API. Let's show you guys the workflow of this application actually running and humming together. I'll show you guys how to create a customer, as well as how to check out with an actual customer, check out with a guest, as well as how to, pull the products and do the whole session, and I'll show you guys the workflow. So let's get into it. But right before we get into the demo, if you guys are finding this video helpful, please drop a like on this video, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my other lovely content. All right, guys, so we have the API running. First thing I want to do is go ahead and create a customer, just to show you guys how a customer would look in our dashboard, in our system, and then so that we can actually test one of these with a customer ID. So this will hit this method right here. We can step through it if you guys want, but I'm just going to do it anyway. Why am I asking you guys? It's a YouTube video, right? Let's try this one out. Since I'm in a Star Wars shirt, you can't even see it. You can't even see it. And I got a bunch of Star Wars merch all over. Let's do Ahsoka Tano. It's my favorite Star Wars character. And let's just say she were to have an email. It would be at@gmail.com. Let's execute. Now in here, we should see the customer info in here. Then we are going to have that secret key get assigned here. Step through. we have our customer options. So in here we have the email, name, and then we're going to step through here and then continue. And then we should see in our reply that we're getting the full customer object right here. And now if we go back to our dashboard, which is over here, we should be able to see our customer. So now we actually have a real customer, not just the guest. So in here we see our email, the name, and if we click in here, we should see that customer ID. So let me copy that and let me put it here in the place of this one. And now let's go ahead and see our front end with our API now running. So we should be able to get all products. So let me just collapse this right here. Get all products is already working, but if we just want to see it get all the products, let's try it out. Let's execute it. We see here that we are returning the sneakers. So if we go down here, we have one image, another sneaker I like, which is the Jordan 5s with all the black sneakers. And then if we scroll down here, we should see the Ant Pro KD4s, which are the pink sneakers that I have. These are some other sneakers I've always wanted. So let's collapse this and now actually see it in the front end. So going over here, we have our front end right here. Let me refresh. You see that it brings in the two sneakers from Stripe. If you want confirmation that it's actually these two, right? Just to make sure that you guys don't think I'm a liar, we can go to the products and you can see right here. I wonder if I can zoom in. You can see both of the sneakers right here. These are the two that we are pulling. Okay, so now we are going to do the pay method. The pay method gets hit when? When is this hit? This is hit at this point in the workflow. When we do the client selects something or wants to buy something, and then now we need to create the checkout session. So the pay method is right in here. So to do that, I put a breakpoint here so that we can see that price ID coming in from the sneaker. So whenever I press buy, that will be triggered. So let's say we want the Jordan 5s. We press buy. We're going to see that we're going to get this price ID. As you can see, this is not a product ID. It doesn't say product, it says price. So we are passing in the price ID because we want to be able to get all the information for how much this object costs. So we again pass in the secret key, step through. We're going to create our session. So again, now we are at this part right here. We're going to be going to the Stripe API to get those URLs that we need. So again, we're going to pass in the price. The quantity is 1. Obviously, if it was multiple, you would set the quantity to whatever you wanted. If there was multiple products, you would also set that in here as well. And we are setting the success URL to be the success page. Cancel URL is just going to be this exact page right here. As you can see, it's localhost 4200. So let's step through this one. And this is going to be with a guest because we do not have a customer here. And we're going to create the session service, step through, and we should be able to see that we have 3 URLs here. We have the pay. This one is going to be the one that actually sends us to Stripe to then go and complete the checkout there. We're going to have the other 2 URLs for success and cancel. So now we step through this. Our front end is going to then be routed out. So now, as you can see, it doesn't say localhost up here anymore. It says checkout.stripe.com. This is the URL that we got back whenever I was explaining to you guys. In here, we were able to capture that redirect URL that we got from Stripe, and then we redirected the window, as you know, or maybe you don't know. When you do window.location.href, that sets the URL up here at the top. So essentially, we set that URL here, and that sent us to this page. So now we have left my front-end client application. We've left my API. We are now in Stripe checking out. So as we can see here, we have a few options. We are now a guest though. So you could pay with link. In some other options, I believe you can have either Apple Pay or Google Pay. So those are also options. But now let's go through and fill this out. Like if I was going to buy this with my test account. Okay, so I've gone ahead and filled this all out. So I set my email in here. I set a test visa. So there's a lot of different numbers that you can find in the Stripe documentation as well for test cards that you can use to test different types of cards. I'm just doing the test visa number. So it's 42, 42, 42, 42, 42. I don't know if that's enough 42s, but then my name and country and region. So I'm going to go ahead and pay now. This is going to be as a guest. Remember that. So green check. We are now successfully going back to our success page, which is this part of the page. That is, congrats, you just bought some sneakers. So now let's confirm that this went through. If we go back here, we should be able to see, I think, payments. We should see that as of March, we should have a new payment, and it is, I believe, this one right here. So This one is the newest one that just went through, and it has succeeded, and it used that test card, and everything is good. So now to go back, we should see again that this was just with this guest customer. So now let's go back and let's actually try and do this with a created customer, the Ahsoka Tano customer that we just created. So I'm going to go back to my API, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it, and I'm going to uncomment this code out. So now what I'm also doing is not only just checking out as a guest, I'm now checking out as an actual customer. So you'll see that the email will get pulled through, and you'll see that it'll just pre-fill a little bit of things. So now let's restart this API, and we are appending the customer to the options, and then that options gets passed into the session service. So it's running. Let's go back to our front end. Let's refresh this. Now let us go ahead and buy the pink ones. And now we're going to step through. We're going to see now that we have this customer. It's going to be appended into the options. So in the options, we are now going to have an actual customer here. Let's continue. Our front end is now going to route to here. So now, as you can see, since we actually have a customer, it gives us a few more options. So we now have Google Pay here. If you wanted to use Google Pay, we have card. And again, like I mentioned earlier, if you use like Safari, if you're on Mac, you'll get Apple Pay. Sometimes you'll get Google Pay, I think, with Chrome. So you'll have different options that Stripe will just automatically give you. But I believe if you have a customer or not a customer, I think it'll give you a few more options versus if you're a guest, I think it only allows card. I may be wrong, but that's just what I've seen from my tests. So, but as you can see up here at the top, what did it do? It pre-filled the email that goes with that customer ID. So now the cool thing is since we passed in that customer ID, it used the customer object and default values that we used whenever we created that customer account. And it already went ahead and filled out the email with the default email associated to that customer. And now we can go ahead and either fill it out with Google Pay or with a card, but now let's go ahead and do it with the card. So I've gone ahead and filled this all out with the default card information again. And again, we already have the email here. So now let's go ahead and buy these and see if with an actual customer this time and not just a guest, by actually passing in this customer right here, we get the same result of obviously being able to purchase these sneakers. So let's pay. Again, we got a green check mark, and again, we get a congrats, we were able to buy these sneakers. And we can again, should be able to see that transaction. If we go back to payments, we should see that there's been a new one here for the Ant Pro KD4s. Ahsoka Tano has bought these, and she was able to use these with her Gmail account. So that is how an actual customer could create it in this instance versus just a guest could do it in this instance. So those are the two different variations, but both of those really still follow along this process. And I hope you guys, this diagram now makes more sense once you've seen this, which is that checkout session. You then get redirected to Stripe, you complete your purchase, and then you get rerouted to a success or a cancel page. And if you guys want to see the cancel page, we can do that. So essentially what's going to happen is you're going to press buy, you're going to go through here, and you're gonna be like, ooh, I don't have $130. Oh geez, I don't have $130. And you're just gonna be like, well, I'm just gonna click back. Well, it's just gonna send you right back to localhost 4200 because that is the cancel URL, and that is the cancel URL, right? And that is how that works, guys. But it's that easy, guys. This is all that we had to do to add Stripe to our .NET 8 API to accept payments, handle our customers, handle our products, and there's still so many other wonderful features that Stripe gives you. So I encourage you guys to continue to explore everything else that Stripe provides. But hey, maybe you didn't like the way that I just kept our secret keys as just strings in our app settings file. Well, go watch this video about how you can rip them out of that file and throw them up into the cloud into Azure Key Vault.